But do feel free to use the chat window. I just want to say welcome and thank you for joining us. And those of you who are new to art.earth is a particular welcome. I'm Richard Paval, and as Matt will tell you in a moment or two, this is the first in a series of events, and it's also the first time we've done one quite like this. So hopefully we will keep things under control. What I'd like to ask of you is that if you have a question while Matt and Pascale are talking, if you just click on your own little window, you can ask it to raise a hand, and I should be able to see that. And then if you would type in your message just to me, so just send it to, do I come up as Richard? I think so. Yes, okay, so send it to Richard Paval, and I'll be able to see that question. And when the moment seems right, I can interrupt and I'll send that over to Matt. We want to keep this both formal and informal, so everybody is muted at the moment, just to help with background noise, basically. I don't think there's anything else I want to say other than it's great to see everybody, and we have a couple more people due to join us, but hopefully that won't disturb the proceedings. At the moment, you should basically just be able to see the three main speakers, and I will disappear off that in a moment. And once we open it up to questions, we can unmute and we can sort of go into a normal mode. So Matt, over to you.
Just before Pascale and I start, did we decide a time about at what point in the hour I should begin to shut up a bit and invite in more questions? I mean, should we just play it by ear? Should we say after half an hour?
Yeah, after half an hour, I'll give you a rude sign or something.
I have a feeling my questions won't be exhausted after half an hour, so that I'll have them in my back pocket if you're all very shy. But I dare say you won't be. Well, yeah, thank you, Richard, and welcome, Pascale. Fantastic to get to talk to you again. And we were just chatting as while everyone was coming in, that the first time I spoke with Pascale was at the Coco Pop. Is that how you say it? Cornwall Contemporary Poetry Festival, 2016 in Falmouth. And we had a panel there on image and word, art and poetry. And Pascale said several things there that I was telling her had stayed in my mind since and hope to bring up again now. So delighted to have her back. I thought what I'd do, I thought, as you said it, technically this is the second borrowed time thing, because about 18 months ago, we had a talk with Dugald Hine, which was where we seeded the idea. I think at that time it was called All in the End is Harvest, and it became borrowed time. So I thought, because this is the first in the kind of year-long series, it might be nice to just bring the borrowed time theme into the room. And I thought, rather than waffling about it, I'm just going to read a section from our call for papers, from our text, that we wove between 6 or 7 of us. Just takes a minute to read, and rather than sort of going on about it, I think I'll just read the question we put out with the call for papers, which I think will be self-explanatory. That there is a deep resource of hope, wisdom, and resilience to be found in confronting and preparing for death's arrival is something long understood across all cultures. What then might such preparation entail in the context of anthropogenic mass extinction? One way or another, this greater dying now presses upon us. Whether we are experiencing ecological loss and displacement firsthand, or negotiating the uneasy, grief-laden sense of borrowed time that has become an insistent background noise for many. How might those whose lives are as yet relatively sheltered by structural or geographic privilege learn to listen better to the obscure, too big to hear keening of mass extinction? Might art and shared testimony prove better equipped to hold and integrate such unimaginable loss than the spreadsheet, the relentless graph. So I think that's not the only epicenter of borrowed time, but it's probably where my interests were focused. So welcome, Pascale. And Pascale is actually, did you know you're muted?
Yes, I muted myself.
Well, so welcome, Pascale. And I don't think I want to say too much. I haven't got your formal blurb here, but we know you as a poet, a celebrated poet, and have enjoyed your collections for years. So really, I just want to say welcome. And I think we're going to begin with a reading, and and then I'll take it from there. With
okay,
questions.
thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start by reading one longish poem and one very short poem to get us going. I'm going to read from the screen. So I'm reading from Tiger Girl, which is my latest and 8th poetry collection, where I attempt to move away from my very obsessive concerns with the Amazon rainforest. And I really started writing this book just after the Brexit referendum. And I think because of the terrors that I had about not being British at that time, prompted me to think about my grandmother, who had a secret Indian heritage but lived in Wales. And so, of course, because I have an obsession with big cats, what I really think about when I think of my grandmother, the most, the most enthralling thing was her stories of tigers, of having encountered a tiger when she was an infant. So I wanted to go to India and to encounter tigers. And so I did that. I went to several tiger forests, national parks, because that's the only place where they're relatively safe, though not always. And in this poem, I go into the forest, but really it's at night. And I wrote it after I read an account by a forest guard who had been a poacher, who gave very scary accounts of his indifference when 2 tigers and other creatures, when he was a poacher, and of course now he loves them. So this is in the forest. In the forest, I saw a man sewing an owl's eyes shut. The owl was on a leash, and the man pulled it to make it flutter and attract songbirds to mob his decoy. He told me how much he could earn from warblers in cages. I wondered which was worse, the blind eagle owl or thrushes glued to sticks. The deeper I went, the more I saw. What is worse? Asked the sky, a girl with sewn eyes or glued lips. The deeper I walked, the harder I looked, although it was dark and there were no stars. 4,000 rupees for a barn owl to be sacrificed for Diwali to light up the dark with dark. I went even deeper into the core, patrolled by forest guards on tuskers, but it was night and the bulls were chained. I saw another man who led me to a cave, which he called his vault, and there was a tigress inside, giving birth to striped gold. I said, my eyes are stitched and my lips sealed, and he placed coins in my hand, said it was jungle currency. And I knew then I was holding the eyes of cubs. I said to the poacher, I'm not from here, I do not judge, but the eyes muled in my hands. So I ran through every coppice and every clearing and looked at the moon whose eye was sewn shut. I passed the firefly tree and the flame of the forest, and I swear there were leopards dangling from their boughs. I came to the crocodile bark tree and the ghost tree as the first rays peered through night's lids, but the sun couldn't look at what I had seen. The sun couldn't wake the sambar, cheetal, antelope, or gazelle. So I was the only witness of those luminous herds with fire trees on the altars of their brows, all sacrificed for good fortune. Goddess Lakshmi, forgive them as you ride your owls. And that was long ago now, but still I'm running through that forest, watched by the moon eye and the sun eye. But now it's a forest of peeling red bark, of leopards with paws sawn off, stuffed into pockets for luck. While in the tantric market, a trader slices a tiger, giving it new stripes. 1 stripe for a lakh of rupees. I run through thickets of dust trees until I reach the realm of the sloth bear, where a cub clings to his electrocuted mother. And here I find a man laughing as he hooks a cane through the cub's nose and teaches him to dance. The night is black as bear fur, its muzzle bleeding after eating honey baited with explosives. How many rupees for the galaxies in a gallbladder? I run more slowly now, afraid of traps for my ankles, snares for my neck. You could say my flight is a jerky dance, the stars my audience with shielded eyes, because the ringmaster has arrived in heaven with his flaming hoops archangels must leap through. Where are the angels with fangs that sever windpipes, angel fangs around a black hole's neck, bought in the black market? Goddess Durga, who rides the sky tiger, forgive us. You could say the stick that makes my head jerk is a bad branch from the tree of life, but I swear there's a tree of good, if only I could find it, for the cub that survived, whose claws are new moons that light up my path. And even though it's day now, the forest has drawn blinds over itself. I climb a hide, and as I climb, the trees grow higher. Banyan boles pierce the ladder and hiss like snakes with skeleton leaves. I pass choirs of langurs with silver fur and ebony faces, their echoing barks getting louder. But even up here, vendors are shouting, 10 crore for a white tiger, 5 crore for a black leopard. Here, where the blacksmith forges leg traps in the night market. Here too there are trees with scratch marks, but no tigers, unless you count the meat without skin, all bones pulled out. For just 1 rib of barg can buy a cow. Let me tell you what I saw. Let me whisper it. I saw an archangel with its paw mangled in a trap for what seemed an aeon. I saw a man waiting for it to weaken while he ate his meal on a teak leaf. And when he had finished, I saw him whittle a stick, and when the archangel was too weak to move, he jabbed his stick into its mouth so no one would hear its music. I saw him pick up a branch and batter the spine. And I knew then that the branch was from the tree of secrets. For how else did he know where creatures of light walk on our earth, their footprints that glow on the path, saying, this way, this way to my kingdom. Then the man got out his skinning knife. 30 minutes it took him to flay the hide intact with its arabesques of bulldozed gardens. If it were possible to remake the creature from its pelt, I would do it. But the man sold the pelt because his family was hungry. And I vowed then never to eat again. I descended the spiral ladder, and with bamboo thorns and plant fiber, I sewed my eyes shut. And with resin from the tree of love, I glued my lips. So after that, I'm going to read a more hopeful short poem. And this is, so being in the Indian national parks, there are quite a lot of clearings. And before, that would have been where the tribals would have lived. But most of them have been expelled, and they live in the outer zones, the buffer zones. But in these clearings, so yes, in the book, in Tiger Girl, there are clearings and the incredible birds that you would see there, and all the deer as well. So this is the green bee eater. More precious than all the gems of Jaipur, the green bee eater. If you see one singing, tree, 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 with his space black bill and rufous cap, his robes all shades of emerald, like treetops glimpsed from a plain. His blue cheeks, black eye mask, and the delicate tail streamer like a plume of smoke. You might dream of the forests that once clothed our flying planet. And perhaps his singing is a spell to call our forests back, tree by tree by tree. So thank you for listening to those.
Thank you, Pascale. Fantastic. Lovely to hear them after reading them a few times. So when we were waiting for everyone to come in, I was talking about when we met last time at the art and poetry paddle in Falmouth, and you were talking about your earlier incarnation as a sculptor. And I thought with where we're speaking now, art.earth, for me anyway, it's got this very important S after art and ecology. It's arts and ecology, and there's this sense of what the arts at large open up in our engagement with the ecological world. And I just wondered for you how you'd speak to that as a sometime sculptor, now turned poet, the way in which thinking in images, thinking materially, lets you into this area, lets you take on this subject matter.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I was a very devoted sculptor, so to have given up doing that, I could only have given it up if I felt that I was making sculptures with words, but without the disadvantages of storage space and vans and not least my quite unfit, frail body making things. And I felt that I wasn't making things well enough, and that maybe the poems were working better in that regard. So I think in terms of the long poem that I just read, that was a poem that I wrote and didn't edit, which is something I tell my students not to do. I did change the lineation of it, but and I cut out maybe 2 lines. It really did come in a kind of trance, which is, I think, when writing is at its best, when that happens. And to answer your question, I feel that for me, that's a journey. So it's almost like going into a gallery where there's an installation, and it's an installation of the forest at night. And these things would flash up, and these trees, and the crocodile bark tree is that's the real name of a tree, and so is the ghost tree. But I made up a few of the others. So I guess I'm trying to make things as physical as possible with words, so that they are like something you might immerse yourself inside.
Yeah, that makes.
I didn't know where I was going with that poem. I just started, and it took me. Of course, I had done a lot of research about poaching, but it isn't hard to do that. There is so much poaching that, it's just a question of what you choose to highlight.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's a really interesting distinction as well, that when you start it, you don't know where it's going, which is maybe one really fundamental difference between that and the kind of more empirically based polemical sort of argument, the data dump type of argument about the same material. Funny enough, I wanted to ask about the sort of shift from the other books with Tiger Girl, because it felt really marked to me, but in a way you've spoken to that already, and I want to leave time to let others in. So there's a couple of questions that I might just sort of, we'll see if the second one might get answered in your answer to the first, but I wanted to talk about the violence in the book and the cruelty, because one thing that kept striking me, and I wondered if this was how you thought about it, I've tagged the question, the tiger-shaped universe, and it was this sense of this sort of horrible casualness of human cruelty to non-human life, in this case, obviously to human life too. It was as if you would sort of took that and you put it inside something bigger, which was the kind of the background ferocity of life itself, that not all the cruelty in the poems is human on human or human on nature.
Yeah.
But that larger violence, ferocity, I'm not sure what word you'd use, it seemed to do something, act upon the first. I'm not sure if that's a clear question, but that's an impression. I don't know if that...
Yeah, I think that's from the poem
Tiger Myth.
Tiger Myth.
Yeah,
Tiger Myth. That one took me a very long time to write, to finish. I do think probably that the universe is a violent place. And I guess my childhood had violence in it, which is maybe one reason why I bring the violence in fearlessly. And also, if you watch tigers catching their prey, even my cat, catching a rabbit, it is very violent. And so I did kind of confront that. But the other main big force in the book is mother love, which in my case came from my grandmother, my Indian grandmother. So and also when learning so much about tigers, and and their mother love, which is absolutely incredible. That they, I mean, tigresses are just such incredible creatures, more so than the bigger and more impressive tigers, males, you know, because they have to catch more, they have to feed their cubs, and they have to protect them from the males, apart from usually the father, and they have to keep hiding them, and then they grow up and they fight her, you know, and they fight each other to the death. Well, they do that now, and I don't know if they would have done that had there been an India full of forests, you know, but there isn't now. So, and there is just a huge amount of people, of course, which is why it was so interesting to focus on there. But yes, yeah, so that kind of violence of the conflict between the human and the animal is very evident there, because you have all these amazing creatures, the elephants, the wild elephants, and the leopards and the tigers and the sloth bears. And then you have an awful lot of very poor people who are trying to not starve, and they come in, the farmers come into conflict, and so that, you know, that's where the problem is really, and of course the very reduced forest, that I think that causes violence. So I had to say the truth.
Yeah. Thank you. And as I thought would happen, where you're taking each question knocks all my other questions out of sequence, because I then want to jump over one that doesn't need asking anymore. But I want to come around to that more kind of redemptive or regenerative element in Bee Eater. But and again, I'm not sure if this is a question or an impression, but I've been doing Extinction Rebellion talks all summer. That's on Zoom.
Right.
To nobody, but that's another one. But there's a sense there of a great focus, perhaps because it's to a UK or, you know, an audience more directly involved in it, of the effect of, for instance, of extractive capitalism and a large-scale, matter-of-fact, obscene cruelty within that system. And I was quite pulled up. It was quite different, what you were presenting me with in the book, which was the cruelty here was more like kind of backstreet murder and torture, with sort of poverty and, you know, reaching after manipulative magical thinking to try and fight off difficult odds. You know, it was a very different kind of face. And I thought it's a place I hadn't gone much. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And I wondered if that space meant anything to you, or if you had anything.
Yeah, it does. I do have something to say about that. Yeah, so I always want to know why people do bad things, why people hurt, and I think it was very evident in India that that's the conflict there is one species trying to survive against another trying to survive, and that, of course, they're controlled by capitalism and the larger forces in the world. So, but I suppose I don't know if it's crazy of me, but I do think that people at heart must be good. And I think that, so that's why I'm always examining what goes wrong, what causes the violence, whether it's towards people, towards children, towards women, or animals, or indeed trees, or the ocean. And so it's part of that. And I think there's no point writing about what's wrong and what's bad without bringing in what it is that I'm actually, you know, what drew me to go to India and to go to the Amazon rainforest is to see the wonders that these places contain, and to also, you know, to see it, hopefully not before they vanish, but it is a possibility, you know, the way things are going at the moment. But they have to turn around. So yeah, that there is, there's no point describing the horrors without saying, but look, you know, look at that bird, look at that tigress's eyes. They're just, how can you describe that? I mean, that's, I think, you know, we have a task as a species. I don't know whether we're the planet trying to hold mirrors to itself. I don't really know what we are, but if that's what we are, then we have a job to try and do that.
That's lovely, because I wanted to ask or bring in that turn that the green bee eater makes, which I think you've just spoken to really beautifully. And I've got more that I'd like to bring in, like I said before the end. But there's a question lined up from Kate Compston. So I wonder, Kate, if you'd like to unmute. Let's just mess up the settings by having your question in, and I'll just drop the sequence.
Yeah, my question was, I'm just going to read it, otherwise I won't remember it. That I wonder how much the poetry, the form of it, the need to choose your words and images, you know, the artistry in general, how much that is acts as a container for the violence which might otherwise be just too hard to bear. And you know, that's why people turn away, why they deny. It's just too hard to bear. But I think, I don't know whether you've got a comment on whether artists and their need to find ways of expression, containers, whether that is, it's about how to deal with the violence in a way.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, you don't want to repel your readers or your audience. And what I'm in the business of is making art, not, you know, it's not a newspaper article. So what I'm trying to do is show it changed and contained, as you said, Kate. So it's held, and yeah, I think that's so. There must be a careful balance in the book where the two I don't know where. So the song, for example, I was aware that in the forest there is quite a lot of assonance and half rhyme, which is, and the way it's set out in couplets and triplets and singlets, that it's like a dance as well, so that it's a dance rather than a run through the horrors. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Kate. And there was I was thinking when you were answering, Kate, there, because there's the again in Tiger Myth, there's a lovely line in Tiger Myth about don't write about the tiger-shaped universe. And then you say, go to a clearing in the milky forest where a tiger lies skinned. Describe that, they said. And it's really this kind of zooming down that I suppose is very familiar in conversations around poetry. But I was thinking about it in terms of reading as well, that I feel really acted upon by these. And it's as if I was trying to work out, like as I said in the blurb for the talk, why I find it helpful to read these poems faced with this kind of extinction rhetoric or this extinction reality, maybe. And I wondered for you whether you had, you know, not just writing poetry, but encountering it, and also quite specifically, who you would turn to, and who are your kind of lights or main light in this area.
Mm, mm. I always go completely blank when someone asks me that question.
Asking you to tell a joke.
Because I'm reading poetry all the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I all kinds of
general
poets that, yeah, generally, you know, I love Les Murray, I love Thomas Tranströmer, I love Rilke, I love there's just too much, really. Alice Oswald, I love her work. You know, I think she has such a fresh eye for looking at objects or non-human life. It's just too many, really. I love different poets for different things that they bring to. You know, Natalie Diaz, I love for her language and her luxuriance. So I do like quite expansive poets who are luxuriant, but I also really admire pared down stuff as well. But I suppose I tend towards the luxuriant spectrum.
That's great.
There's a poet who's going to be published next year by Blood Axe called Dom Berry.
Yeah.
He has a...
He's local, isn't he? He's near, isn't Dom up in Totnes?
Yes, he has a book called Rite of Passage,
yeah,
which I've read, and that's going to be something. I really recommend him. Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe we should be talking to Dom soon. I thought, like I said, I've got sort of more questions if there's time for them, but maybe I've got one more I'd like to ask as we invite others in, but maybe while I'm asking it, if other people want to kind of bring on their video and we can come into a kind of more conversational mode so that people can put questions directly themselves from the floor. I wanted to, Pascale, just in relation to the kind of theme that we began with, I was thinking about the recent, I don't know if you saw the recent David Attenborough that's getting lots of attention, the kind of witness statement, Life on Our Planet. And
I didn't, I actually missed that.
Well,
yeah,
it's worth watching, and there's lots to celebrate. He does a wonderful thing, but he turns at the end and he says, you know, the tone of it in the whole second half is very much, we're doing this, but we can do something different if we choose to. Which made me quite, it made me quite sort of angry when he was saying it. I felt like, well, what do you mean? What are you saying to people? How are they gonna, how are they going to? And then later when he was rubbishing civil disobedience, I thought, I'd love to hear where you are with this language about, because I encountered you recently on Writers Rebel, loved the poems you shared there. And I wondered where you were with that language of rebellion in the face of these things, as a sort of citizen, as well as a writer, and what it means for you, for writers to rebel, or whether you prefer a different verb. Or anything to say to that whole discourse?
I think it's essential to be able to rebel. People should always be able to rebel anyway, like children should be able to rebel. I'm all for it. And you know, I'm particularly keen that it's young people, especially, who are rebelling, and it gives me hope. So, because they are the future, so maybe things will change. And I don't know.
That's a kind of bombshell word, isn't it? Hope, because I think there's that whole paradoxical conversation around hope there, that the urgency with which people need to understand that there is no hope is the only source of hope there is. You know, yeah.
Yes.
Well, come and if I go into gallery view, if other people started appearing, oh yeah, look at that. There's lots of other people there. Hello, Charlotte.
Shall I put gallery view on as well?
Yeah, if you go to gallery view, you'll suddenly find there's other humans.
Yes, there's some people.
Hey, Anna, that's
Hello.
great. So does anyone else want to just, you don't need a coherent question. You're welcome to just come in with a kind of thought or impression. Otherwise, you just get to listen to all of mine, which is fine. Charlotte,
Hi.
welcome. Good to see you both.
Can you hear me all right? Because this computer's a bit dodgy sometimes.
We've now got
hello,
3 cats on the call.
Hmm?
We've now got 3 cats on the call.
Have we? Oh God. I know, we're all at it. Us felines. Pascal, really loved your poems. Thank you for reading them and speaking today. I just had a question really about tigers, which is, when you were there, did you feel any direct communication with the tigers, either through encounter or through dreaming? I'm always, because we're always, aren't we, as writers, saying it from our human perspective, I'm always fascinated by, you know, is there a comeback? Is there any kind of communication, and what form that might have taken?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, I did actually. I spent a lot of time in Bandhavgarh National Park, and the second time I went to India, and I spent all my time there, and in particular in Tala zone, which is the core zone, which is the original zone around the fort. And I saw a lot of tigers there and in Ranthambore, but and in Kanha. Oh, actually, no, I didn't see any tigers in Kanha. I saw other creatures. But one particular tigress got my attention. She's known as Spotty. That's because she's got a calligraphic T above her eye. And in some lights, her eyes are blue because her father was Blue Eyes. So, you know, people, I should say that of these national parks, only 20% is actually open to tourists. But that 20% can be quite packed with jeeps, open jeeps, gypsies. So there we were on the very last day, in fact, on the evening of the very last day. And she'd been asleep in the stream. And then she decided to get up. So she walked up the stream towards us. And we were right at the back, so in front. And we were off into the stream, in fact. And she came so close, and she rubbed herself. I was on the back seat, you know, and she rubbed herself against the jeep and then went past. And we kind of followed her for quite a bit. And then our driver, Aju, went right around through the trees, and then she was behind us. And so we stopped, and I stood up, and she was within 2 meters of me. And I made eye contact. But even before I made eye contact, just watching her eyes was just something I didn't expect to see what I saw in her eyes. And it was such a strange, I mean, I tried to describe it in poems, but I don't think I did. It was like, you know, and you could see how she was reacting to the humans. She's known as a calm tigress. You know, they split them up into the shy ones and the calm ones. And of course, then the chargers and the challengers, which are the males usually. But she, you know, she was very aware of us, half ignoring us, but she made contact, and then she went past the jeep, and then she rolled over, you know, like cats do, as if to say, aren't I beautiful, you know? And so I think she was enjoying being admired. So it was very interesting to see the tiger's reaction, really, and their relation to tourists. And of course, it's the tourists that pay for the guards to be in the forest. You know, they're on their own in little huts in the forest, no guns. So yeah.
Brilliant, fantastic story. Richard, have you got your hand up?
I do. Yeah, I do.
You have up to speak.
Yes, and my question was, have you ever speculated on what that relationship between tigers and humans, or other wild animals and humans, how much that has shifted, and whether in fact the kind of relationship that you felt in the protected area of the national park would have been more typical of the kind of relationship that there might have been between humans and wild animals before we started to kill them in such large numbers.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course, I've read all the old hunting books and about the man-eaters, and generally the impression I've got is that tigers left humans alone. Originally, they just left them alone. They did not see them as prey. And then if they were wounded or old or enraged in some way, then yes, they would see them as something to kill and to eat. Mainly from hunger and sometimes from protection, self-protection. But yeah, I don't really know,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't spent that much time with tigers or...
I said earlier, Pascale, that I wanted to talk about the kind of redemptive force in the writing, and I think in many ways you've answered that several times already really powerfully, not least in that story, actually, in the way. But I thought one thing we haven't talked about specifically is death and dying, and I was thinking while you were talking that the difficult thing in the book being the thing that needs acting upon, the thing that needs, as Kate put it, sort of holding in the space of the poetry. I wouldn't describe that as death. I wouldn't, and I wondered, there's that lovely line in here, isn't death sparks of holy fire? As if death is more aligned to the wonder and the regenerative element of it, along with grandmotherly love. And not a very clear question, but it's just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know, but I do think death is a mystery, and I can't see the consciousness just vanishes, just changes, I think. So, but I don't know. It's just, my part to question, really, as an artist.
Yeah.
Someone wanted to ask something?
Oh, good, Mark. Lovely.
My name's not on here because I'm not really supposed to be here.
He's an interloper.
That thing you're not supposed to do at parties. What's that called?
Crash.
Dead crash.
And I'm glad I have, because it's really, really amazing. But I just wanted to, I don't know if this is a question or not, but when you were just speaking, Pascale, about tigers having left humans alone in the past, generally, and only eating the, if they were old or infirm in some way or something like that, it brings a whole question for me into one, our terror of being devoured, our terror of actually being devoured in any way, whether that's, I mean, physically, obviously that would be a terrifying thing, but also on all sorts of other levels, emotionally, or being overwhelmed by force, or these kind of things. But certainly the devouring thing, which seems to be, when we look at our cat hunting, just as the same as yours, when I first saw her catch a rabbit in the summer and just eat absolutely everything, it was like a primal horror in a sense, but also it seemed to connect me with, because I was I'm mostly vegetarian, so I was like, oh, okay, so this is a cat. This cat is never going to be vegetarian. It's a cat. It's a cat, and I'm a human. And why do I think I'm so special? And there's this whole thing of our thinking and our view of ourselves being totally special and more important than everything else, in alignment with this sort of fear of being devoured. As well. I mean, it's not a question, but it's something that came up for me when you were talking. And, I don't know if you have anything to say to that. But...
I don't think I have anything to say about it. I was thinking, I don't know why I was thinking about elephants, and you know, because tigers respect elephants generally. I know I've seen tigers being afraid of the tusker, and the female elephants were there with the guards. Some of them patrol on elephants. And so it was interesting, because I was thinking, well, what's the difference with humans? Most humans are taller than me. I'm only 5 foot. And so I guess things that are bigger than them, they would respect and think that it's just, well, they've got to conserve energy. So they don't want to waste their time trying to kill something that's going to be too hard, unless they're really starving. But yes, of course, the whole thing of terror of being devoured. In fact, I think it was yesterday I saw on Instagram, I managed to keep track of how the tigers that I saw are doing, you know, because of course they shut down a lot through the pandemic, and now the parks are actually open, evidently to just Indian tourists, which doesn't make as much money because they charge much more for foreigners. There was a film of, there was a video of an immense crowd of people in a village crowded around because they saw a tiger, and the tiger was running and trying to get away from them, and they got in its way and they were screaming and shouting, and then the tiger came, stopped one of them, you know, and tumbled on it and played with him, and then eventually ran off. And I don't think that the person was hurt, but that was absolutely terrifying, because we could have then seen the tiger eating, or certainly, I mean, they've just got to do one swipe and your head's off, you know, or your scalp's off. So yeah, I actually know more about jaguars than tigers, because I spent decades studying jaguars, and eventually saw one in the Amazon rainforest, you know, in Peru, which was incredible to do that, because I'd only seen them in zoos. And so they're quite different from tigers. They're as formidable in that they're as strong, and you know, they're the strongest, I think, of the big cats. They're the most muscular. So they're like the pit bulls of the cat world, aren't they? And they're well known for not attacking humans, you know, whereas tigers are known to have been man-eaters, but it's very rare for a jaguar to do that. So it is. More questions? Richard?
I just wanted to respond to that. Is that in Bruce Chatwin's The Songlines, which partly is not really about songlines, but his own quest to find the roots of why man is so violent, and he tracks it down. He thinks, the theory being that he goes to the Transvaal and sees this skull of a Dinofelis, which is, you know, like the original big cat. And he said all the roots of our violence are based on our terror of being devoured by big cats.
Right.
Through time, and then we've retained this fear, and that has made us constantly on edge. I mean, whether this theory is true or not, but I do think there's something about. I was really interested in hearing what you were saying about violence and cats. That those two things there's a resonance there.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting idea that it comes from that. I mean, it must have been just so terrifying to come across the original tiger, yeah, huge, in the cave, and with their enormous fangs as well. And yeah, so maybe that kind of accounts for the hunting instinct, and why people, men in particular, love to go out shooting things, and you know, and how they love shooting big cats, which I just find incredible. You know, why would you shoot something so beautiful? But maybe that's the reason. I don't know. That's behind it.
There is a reason, I guess.
Yeah.
We've we thought that it would be lovely to end with another poem or even two at the end, but so I thought maybe Kate's been moving her hand, and I'd love to bring in another question from Kate, and then if no one else has sort of got one bursting out of them, maybe we could then just leave a space for the poems themselves to come back in at the end. I've got a couple in mind, but you might too, Pascale. So I'll Kate.
Yeah, this isn't a question so much as a comment, and it's going back, Matt, in a way to your question about the place of rebellion, really. And I wanted to say that alongside rebellion, which is one response to the climate crisis and to the violence that we, foist upon our fellow creatures, another response is, I'm afraid this is quite a trite comment really, but it needs to be made again. Another response, which I think you do so wonderfully, Pascale, is to point to the beauty and the wonder and to inspire or re-inspire our love for creation.
Yeah.
And I think I find that sustains me more than rebelling, actually. I can get sort of weary about rebelling, and I have been out there on the streets doing some of that. But, what really sustains me is that the fact that although we are almost beyond hope, perhaps we are already beyond hope, there is still the love that needs to be emphasized, and we need reminding about it, and it's that which sustains us and makes us, takes us from day to day almost.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful to you, among many other poets, but you capture things so beautifully. To point to that, hey, creation inspires. It is so lovely. Let's keep it if we possibly
can. It is, and I think that that reminded me of what I have to keep reminding myself, that a lot of people are dislocated from that. I mean, I used to live in London, but nonetheless, I was always traveling, which is its own problem. But I lived in my head anyway, in my imagination. So I was always elsewhere in my head. But I am aware that an awful lot of people are brought up in buildings and with people and out of touch with the natural world and the wonder and the beauty of it. I mean, if you saw Angel Falls, if you saw the Great Barrier Reef, if you saw all these creatures in their home, which David Attenborough did do a good job of showing us, but we could get too complacent about that, and think it's always going to be there, and it isn't. It's vanishing. But I do think that is one thing that's very important. That and that's, I guess, education. Could have a role there with bringing nature back into education.
Thanks, Pascale. That fantastic answers, and I'm going to suggest that we wrap with a single poem. Just a sort of comment, really, that also bring nature back into education, but also I'm listening to a lot of friends talking to young people about ecological grief, for instance, or ecological anxiety. And I feel like maybe poetry needs to come into that conversation more, because data doesn't seem to have a huge amount to offer, so bringing that kind of love back as the answer, as an answer in itself.
Yeah, the problem with data is that it cannot have any effect on you.
Yeah,
it can just, oh yeah, because you're too used to it.
Exactly.
That's the trouble with
or
that.
A brief shock, and then you just numb out to it.
Yeah, after that you just think, I can't take anymore, So that's what Kate was saying before about somehow containing it in the poem, so that it's not unbearable to to see. So what would you like me to?
So I'm going to give you a choice, because I think tigers have come strongly into the room, and I feel like there should be a tiger in our final poem, which isn't hard. But how about either tiger myth or forest guard, depending on which?
I think I'll read tiger myth, if that's
lovely. And just before you do, because then we can end with the poem, I just want to give a big thanks to Pascale and to Richard for setting it up, and to all of you for coming, and then we'll let Pascale's poetry end the hour that we spent together. So thank you, Pascale. It's been lovely talking to you. And,
thank you, Matt, and thank you, Matt and Richard, for inviting me to be the first of the Borrowed Time talks, and thank you for everyone coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to read Tiger Myth from my book, which has a painting by a Gond, Pardon Gond artist, Jangar Singh Shyam, on the cover of a tiger in a tree. Tiger Myth. They said to me, don't write about the tiger-shaped universe, only its stripes spiraling about you in weather fronts and galaxies. They said, don't meet its gaze, its eyes are dying stars. They told me instead to go to a clearing in the milky forest where a tiger lies skinned. Describe that, they said. And my words were its stripes cutting across the page, the ripple of its ringed tail, one of creation's cobras, an endless vowel speeding towards extinction. And I saw that sentences could be fur stripped from the living power, that they were cooling as I tried to write them. There was no roar, just a whimper, which told me it was still alive. Then they asked, who is the hunter? Who the hunted? While elephants of gravity lumbered all around us. My father's rifle leant against the wall like a tired flamingo as the voices murmured and a bee hummed like a bullet. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascale. Great end note, and it's been a really lovely hour talking to you and listening to your poetry. So thanks for starting our year for us.
Thank you for listening.
See you later. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Bye.